You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. Thank you so much, Tiara, for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So I like to start my interviews with you sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes. So my name is Tiara Nicole. I am a motivational speaker, a published author, and a development coach. I work with clients one-on-one on personal development as well as business development. I also do conferences, workshops, lots and lots of fun stuff. I am also an angel mom. I have twin angels, Christopher and Christian.
Yes, awesome. We may have to talk about something that we can do for the Sisters in Loss community afterwards, because I think that would be amazing to talk about, especially as we go towards the end of the year and into the new year.
Correct.
But take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your loss story.
Yes. So my journey to motherhood was completely unexpected. It was not at all on purpose. And me and the father of the twins were pretty fresh into the relationship, still figuring each other out, all that fun stuff. And I remember knowing very distinctly, that I was pregnant, to the extent where I was like, I either am pregnant or I can't get pregnant. That's how certain I was. And I ended up getting pregnant. Cool. Everything was good for the first couple of weeks of knowing that I was pregnant. And then when we had our first sonogram, I think things kind of got real. I call him my ex-baby daddy. And I think things got real for him. And he started to freak out because neither one of us was ready, but I was probably more ready than he would have been. So after that, we started having fights. We started arguing all the time. Back and forth, just a bunch of unnecessary drama. And I really think that contributed to my stress levels, and the stress is the only logical explanation I have for the miscarriage. And so fast forward a little bit, I'm pregnant with twins, not really putting on too much weight. If you didn't know, you wouldn't have known that I was pregnant at all. So I didn't even show until probably 5.5 months. Which, seemed a little unusual considering I was pregnant with twins. So on my 25th birthday, I had a doctor's appointment. And at that appointment, I expressed my concerns. I said, I'm not putting on weight. Is everything okay? Am I eating right? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I not doing? And I distinctly remember being alone. That was the first doctor's appointment where I was completely alone. Ex-baby daddy couldn't get off work. And I was like, oh, it's just a regular appointment. Don't worry about it. My mother she had just flown in on a red eye. So she's like, if I happen to wake up, I'll go with you. And I was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Because in my mind, it was just a regular appointment. And all I wanted for my birthday was to see my twins. And the previous appointment, one of the twins had waived. So I was like, if I can get a waive for my birthday, that's all I need. And unfortunately, I discovered that there was an urgent issue. The doctor really didn't go into detail. She was like, I'm going to get you to an appointment with a specialist. And if you're familiar with the DMV at all, I went from Suitland to Bethesda to go to the specialist. And she was like, well, the appointment's in an hour. It takes probably an hour to get there. So I just zoomed past. Talked to my grandmother. She was like, well, do you want to pick me up? I'll go with you. And I was like, well, I don't really want to miss the appointment time because it sounded really serious. And then my mom was like, oh, I can meet you up there. And I was like, if you can. But I really didn't want to stop because I just knew that it took an hour. The appointment was in an hour. I got to get there. Get to the appointment. And the nurse starts taking pictures and different sonograms and measuring things. And so she takes pictures of baby A and just starts taking pictures. And then she starts to hear the heartbeat. And then she goes to baby B. She starts taking pictures. And then she goes back to baby A. And I said, well, what about baby B's heartbeat? And she looked at me and shook her head. And in that moment, I knew, like, I just felt it, that something was wrong. But it wasn't her, I guess, responsibility to communicate like what happened. So the doctor comes in and explains that not only is one of the twins dead, but based on his size, he's been dead for about 6 weeks. And that miscarriage at that point might have caused some severe brain damage in the surviving twin, and we needed to have a bunch of tests done. So the next 3 weeks or so where I had a test for everything you can imagine. It felt like I was at the doctor's every day, tests and sonograms and blood drawn. And they took amniotic sac fluid, which was a really painful experience, physically painful. I had an MRI done and just the whole nine. Every test that they offered, I took it because I just wanted to have answers. During this 3-week grieving process, between finding out that one twin was dead on my birthday, me and the father of my twins had our final breakup. I was like, I just can't do it. And so his response was more of the immature side, and he made a statement about you and your family can raise this child however you see fit, and basically like walks away from the situation. And so in the midst of making decisions and the MRI and all of that, the results of the MRI confirmed that there was so much brain damage done in the time. Basically, what they think happened is when the first miscarriage took place, the placenta that they shared stopped pumping blood, and that caused the brain damage. It was brain damage that would never recover. There was no fix for it or anything like that, because once the development has taken place, that's it. And if my son were to survive the pregnancy, he would need brain surgery within a week of life. He would need lung surgery within his first year of life. And his life would be filled with doctors and tests, wouldn't be able to walk, wouldn't be able to process visual stimuli. And all of this, he might live to see 20, best case scenario. So I made the decision to induce my pregnancy, which was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. But I knew it was the right thing for my son. And I knew it would be almost selfish of me to bring him into a life that I know he would suffer through. And so me and my mother went to the hospital the next day, delivered both of the twins. And I got to hold the older son. I actually heard him take his last breath. I still to this day can hear that in my head if I sit quietly enough. And ultimately, I made the decision that their lives would not be in vain, and that if I had to suffer through this pain, I would make sure that that pain had purpose. And I would spend the rest of my life focused on creating a life that they would have been proud to be a part of. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I would love for you to take us on the next steps in your journey on just the healing part. After you held your babies, were you able to have a funeral? And then, really take us on, what happened the first week after the loss, a month, a year. Take us on how that grieving journey was for you.
Yes. So the grieving process was very difficult, but it showed me a strength that I didn't know that I had. Actually, 3 days after delivering the twins, I started a brand new job. During the pregnancy, one of the many fights of my relationship while I was pregnant, I ended up losing my job at the expense of the relationship with my child's father. I ended up finding a new job. And so their training program, I delivered the twins at the end of October, and it was with Walmart. So they were like, listen, you can either start in November or you can start in January. I wish I would have started in January, but at that point, I needed the money. So I was like, okay, I need money. If I started in November, then I have money coming. And it was really good money. But at that point, money was my focus, and I accepted the job before either loss had happened. So in my mind, I was like, money is my only priority because I have 3 mouths to feed now. And so the timing of it all was really interesting. But it started with like a 6-week training program. I was away at a hotel in New Jersey. So that was really nice to kind of have that space to just be kind of alone. I had a roommate that was in the training program, but, not having to answer. After the first miscarriage happened when I found out on my birthday, we had dinner planned for my birthday, and you just saw the look of like, oh, I'm so sorry, and just the whole dinner was filled with the empathetic looks. And what's crazy is I wasn't ready to talk about it, but it was shared on my behalf because it was family and friends. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to talk about it. So when it came down to the second, when I delivered the twins, I specifically told my mother, I was like, I don't want to talk about it with anyone. If you tell someone, God bless America, but I'm not discussing it until I'm ready to talk about it. Don't have them call me, don't, whatever. So she was like, well, I got to tell your father and I got to tell your uncle, and your grandmother worries about you. And I'm like, fine, but I'm not talking about it until I am ready. So having the opportunity to go away for 6 weeks was really helpful in that it gave me the space to kind of just breathe for a moment and get back to figuring out, how do I survive this thing? And in that time, I, searched high and low for resources and answers and solutions and never really found it, particularly from a Christian perspective. I was looking for sermons on grief and death and miscarriage and couldn't find anything really, particularly within the Black Christian community, which was really disheartening because I wanted to respond appropriately, didn't know what to do. What I did kind of tap into from a religious standpoint was the story of Job. And I really resonated with him in that in one day, he lost 12 children, he lost his wife, he got sick, all of his riches were gone, all of his animals were gone, which was, a sense of currency back then. And all that happened in one day. And although mine was probably over a month and a half time span, I still resonated with his story. And through that process, I found solace of some sort in understanding that Job didn't do anything wrong. Like literally, the reason he was in that position was because God challenged the devil and was like, you can't make him curse me. And you could do everything in the world except kill him, and he'll still serve me. And so just understanding that it's not always your fault, and understanding that sometimes bad things just happen to good people. And that's just a part of life. That really helped, understanding that grief looks differently for everyone. So for me, some of the things that were really helpful, like coloring, was really therapeutic for me. I was in therapy every week, like clockwork, for a long time because I knew my mental health was at risk, but also I needed help dealing with it. And I didn't know what to do. Journaling was very, very helpful for me as well. And then, just writing has always been therapeutic. Overall, it was just learning to give myself as much time as I needed and not allow others to impose deadlines on me. I specifically remember a family member asking me, why aren't you happy yet? I was like, what? And this was about 3 weeks after the delivery. And I explained to them, I was like, most women take 6 weeks off of work after delivering, a baby, and they get to take their baby home. I said, I took 3 days off of life, and I still have to figure out grief on top of that. Plus, my body is still recovering from a full-blown delivery. Give me a break. No, I'm not happy right now. I have to figure out what that looks like for myself. And so really being committed to my grieving journey looking however it looked and being okay with that was definitely important. And so I delivered them in October. My due date was in March. By the time the due date came around, I was in genuinely a good place. I feel like it was because I was determined to actually deal with it, as opposed to, I do know people who have experienced the same kind of loss and kind of just brushed it under the rug, didn't want to deal with it. And it's still a sensitive subject to this day. Like they can't talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to think about it. But I feel like if you are committed to processing it and dealing with it head on, you have less long-term history, or it doesn't hurt as badly to hear about it or talk about it or anything like that.
Hey, sisters. It is December, and the new sistersinloss.com website is now live. Yes, we now have a space for us, by us, for all things Black infant and maternal health. Join us over there at sistersinloss.com and download our 100 plus Black owned ran businesses and organizations that are related to pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. If you want to write or contribute to the sistersinloss.com website, please email us at hi@sistersinloss.com. Check out our new website and let us know how you like it in our Facebook community at sistersinloss.com.
Yes. How far along were you when you lost your twins? I know you mentioned 5 months before. I just want to give some context to the listeners.
Yes. So the first miscarriage happened around 13 weeks, but I didn't find out about it until week 20. I ended up delivering the twins at 23 weeks.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, because I want to make sure people understand that a twin pregnancy is just different. It's different in general, and especially if the twins share a placenta, and just the trauma that you went through just in finding out about the one twin, and then, having to be, gone to a specialist, and it was just, a lot of trauma. And I'm happy that you really forced it on yourself to actually do the work and actually go through that grieving and healing process.
For sure.
So you mentioned a little bit about just how the church played a role in it, but really share with us just how God and just your beliefs really in your faith has been.
So my relationship with God, definitely, that was the biggest test my relationship with God has ever had to go through. I don't know that I passed it the first time around. And by first time around, I mean, like in that moment, I don't know if I passed the test, because initially my gut reaction was like, how can I possibly serve a God that can do anything, that can bring, people back from the dead, that can, move mountains and all of this? How can I serve a God that could have saved my twins? And even if he just had saved the surviving twin, right? Because how you try to bargain with God, which is like the craziest concept in the world, but we all do it. But I was like, even if you just saved Christopher, you could have healed his brain, and you chose not to. And that was the hardest piece to deal with. And understanding that I serve a God that knowingly watched that happen. So that was really difficult to get through at first. Eventually, I started to get a little bit more clarity and understanding that, one, God was protecting me from something and preparing me for something. So he was protecting me from the life that I would have lived had I been permanently connected to a very toxic relationship. That I know for sure. And then also, he was preparing me to use that pain for the benefit of others. And so to be able to sit here and have this conversation, I would have never even known that pain firsthand had I not gone through it. I had a really, really close friend. I'd seen it happen numerous times with her, but it's different when you experience it. And I wouldn't have had the level of compassion and understanding that I have now to be able to speak up and speak out against certain things. And especially within the Christian community, where you say things like, so some of the things that I heard from Christian people included, oh, it's all in God's plan. Or in between the 3 weeks, oh, well, at least you still have one son left. Or something along the lines of, well, you're young, you can always try again. And honestly, those types of conversations, particularly when you're being in the middle of grief, you're being told that it's a part of God's plan, that helped push me away from God, because it was a reminder that, yeah, God is in control and he let this happen. So even though we have good intentions behind our statements, we have to be mindful about what you're saying. Like, yes, I am young and I can still try again, but that does not take away the pain of losing that child. I want those babies. And there's nothing, even if I had 20 more, there's nothing that would take away that hurt. And I think also understanding that we have to be more open and honest about the things that we're dealing with because it happens. And that's okay. And it's a normal part of the process. But because we don't talk about it, you feel like, well, what did I do wrong? For example, my two older cousins, one has 5 kids and the other has 3. So there's 8. I have 8 nieces and nephews, and the oldest is 7. So clearly my family is fertile, right? So why couldn't I carry that baby? What was wrong with me? But when you start to understand that it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 confirmed pregnancies, like you really start to recognize like, okay, things just happen. But I say all that to say, since healing and recovering and going through the grieving process, my relationship with God has been stronger than ever. And I think the more I got understanding of his role in all of this, I think that's when I was able to reconnect that relationship. And once I was able, and I had to go through a process where I had to forgive God because I genuinely felt like either you killed my babies or you watched them die. And either which way, that was a very painful thing to process. But having seen what life looks like 3 years later, I get it. Like, I wish the twins could be here to see it, but I do get why some things needed to happen because my life would look very differently had it not.
Yes, I love everything that you just said. And I know it'll resonate with a lot of the listeners. So, what resources or tools have you found that have really helped you on your journey towards healing?
So the biggest resource that has helped me was therapy. I had started that particular therapeutic relationship when I found out I was pregnant. I have a history of depression and suicide, and so I knew I was at a greater risk for postpartum depression. So I found a therapist, got on board with that, and had developed that relationship with her. I'm very, very, very grateful that I did because I couldn't imagine getting to know one another from a therapeutic relationship standpoint in the middle of that grieving process. But because I'd been seeing her for months at that point, she already knew my background. She already knew who I was as a person, and she was able to help in a more effective way. So even when things are not currently bad, it's helpful to go to therapy. One, you can deal with some of your baggage. And 2, if and when something catastrophic happens, you don't have to play the let's get to know each other game in the middle of your crisis, which would be necessary if that therapist had never met you before that day. Outside of that, I honestly did not see too many resources, which kind of led me to creating the resources I wish I would have had. So fast forward to probably like November of last year, my mother challenged me to be who I needed, provide what I wish I had, and just pretty much be the change that I wanted to see in the world. That's when I wrote my 3rd book, which is Life After Loss. And it is specifically like an how-to on surviving the grief of a miscarriage. And not only how do you survive that grief, but how do you support people through that process? Because I realized there's not a lot of resources on how. And I'm a very practical person. Like, you got to tell me step by step, which a lot of the resources, now, search high and low, a lot of resources that I found were pretty much just like, yeah, it sucks. And I'm like, okay, but what do I do? So now that I've gone through my grieving process, I'm able to, each one reach one and go back and help other people get through their process as well. So that is a resource that is now available, Life After Loss. And it's a pretty open, honest conversation about what does the grieving process look like? And what are some actionable things you can do to process and to heal and to deal with it? Of course, it's from, my perspective and my history, but I also provide options and solutions and choices and just things to consider. And even if you have not had that experience, if you know someone who has, it's helpful to understand their perspective and their point of view because they may not be able to tell you what it's like. But like in that moment. But having gone through it, I try to explain it in a way that kind of makes sense, whether you've experienced it or not.
So my last question for you is, what encouraging words can you leave the angel moms, the sisters-in-law, as they continue on their journey?
My encouraging words are, understand that the grieving process is going to take as long as it's going to take. Have the strength to advocate for yourself and understand that no one else can put a timeline on your grieving process. It's going to take however long it's going to take, and it's going to look however long it's going to look. Did I look crazy coloring in a coloring book? Probably, but it's what helps. Find what works for you and stick with it as long as it's helpful, as long as it's beneficial. And the moment it's no longer helpful, try another activity, try something different. And whatever comes to your heart as like, oh, maybe I could do that. Do that. And make a conscious effort to find purpose through the pain. That purpose may look differently for everyone, but I truly believe that if we find purpose for our pain, it eases it a little bit.
Purpose for your pain, it will ease it a little bit. That's such a great way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Tiara, for sharing your story and light with us. Where can we find and follow you on social?
Yes, so my favorite social media is Instagram. I don't know why. I love it. So on Instagram, I am at @I am_Tiara Nicole, TIARANICOLE. You can visit my website, www.nicolesnetwork.net, NICOLESNETWORK. I'm on YouTube, Nicole's Network. I'm on Facebook, Nicole's Network, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it, I am there. And you can definitely shoot me a message. I'm pretty responsive overall, but definitely shoot me a message if you need my support in any way.
Thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your story. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. For show notes and more information on today's guest, go to sistersinloss.com. If you have not joined our online community, go to sistersinloss.com as well as sign up for our newsletter. We want you to be a part of the community so you can know all of the events that we have planned on as Sisters in Loss. Go to sistersinloss.com, sign up for our newsletter, join our online community, and stay connected with us. Talk to you soon.
Since 2011, American Giant has been making everyday clothing with extraordinary effort. Not in far-off factories, but right here in the USA. We obsess over fabrics, fit, and details, because if you're going to wear it every day, it should feel great and last for years. From the cut of a hoodie to the finishing of a seam, nothing is overlooked. Our supply chain is tight-knit and local, which means less crisscrossing the country and more care in every step. The result is durable clothing, t-shirts, hoodies, sweatpants, and denim that become part of your life season after season. This isn't fast fashion, it's clothing made with purpose by people who care as much about how it's made as how it fits. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with code STAPLE20.